You can also do 5/8. So I'm going to pull it all the way through, but I'm going to stop short just a little bit. So I've stopped, and I have about 2 inches of string left before it goes through the sock. Okay? So I'm going to zoom out so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay? So again, I have threaded my string all the way through except for the last 2 inches. I'm going to take those 2 inches and you're going to tie a knot. Alright. I'm going to zoom back in because I actually have students who sometimes don't know how to tie a knot. It happens. So, what you're going to do when you tie a knot, you have your long piece and you have your short piece. You're going to take your index and your thumb, you're going to go underneath the long piece of string and you're going to grab the short piece of string. I'm going to put my thumb through this little, like in between both of them, like that. Wrap that through. Do you see how I flipped my fingers over? So again, let me show you again, just that first piece. So I'm grabbing the string with the other piece just to hold it tight with my middle finger, my index and my thumb. I've gone under the long piece. I'm grabbing the short piece. I'm leaving my thumb in the middle. Okay, so do you see how there's a cross right there? Now, I have this short piece in my hand right here. It's going to go through that hole. And then it's coming out the other side. I'm going to take it with my thumb and my index of my left hand, and I'm going to pull tight. Then, to make sure that it stays, you're doing it again. So, here's your string, got my index and my thumb, flip it under, grab the tiny piece of string, pull it under, keep your thumb in the middle, because it's got to make that hole, okay? Then, I'm going to let go of that long piece. Here's that short piece. Here's the hole. I'm going to stick it through that hole. It's come out the other side. And I'm going to pull tight. Alright, now you have extra string. Right there. So now you have about 2 inches of extra string. You need to cut some of it off. If you cut very close to that knot, what's going to happen is that string's going to come out of that knot. So you need to, again, do about 5/8, half a centimeter about, of string left. Okay, so do you see where my scissors are? Here's the string. I'm going to do about half of a centimeter away. I'm going to cut. So I've cut it. Alright, so now my string is attached. Now I'm going to take my needle, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to call, this is called the oversew. I think it's one of the strongest stitches, however we're adding a knot to it. So I'm going to go through, again, seam allowance, okay, stick it through all the way, then before I pull all the way, okay, before I pull it all the way through, here's my needle, still halfway through my sock, the thread that is attached to the sock, I'm going to loop it once around my needle. Okay, let me show you again. I'm going to zoom in on that. Okay, again, there's my needle. I'll stick it out that way. You take the string that's attached to the sock, you're going to loop it around. I like to go under and then back over. It's just a loose loop. I'm not going crazy. Okay, so it's a loose loop. Then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to pull through. And what that does is it makes like a little knot. It's not a big, big knot, but it does. Then, ooh, perfect. Alright, so I had a little accident. Oops, it's going through. So what happened is sometimes it gets caught, and just do the best you can at getting it through. Once it, sometimes it'll get in a little knot, and I'll show you how to fix that once I come across a knot I can't come out of. So again, I'm going to go through, halfway, wrap it around, straighten out, and I'm going to show you how to make sure that you don't get a tangle, because they're easy to come across. So again, I'm going to take my needle out real quick. Stick it in halfway through. Think about the seam allowance. I'm taking my string, I'm wrapping it around my needle, then watch my hand. I'm straightening out the rest of the loop because it basically makes a loop. Okay? So I straightened it out. If you don't straighten it out, what ends up happening is it gets all tangled together. So straighten it out and then just pull through. Okay, and then that makes it nice and tight. Now, once you start, you can just start going. Straighten it out. Oh no. Okay, so here's perfect. Perfect moment. So, I'm going to zoom in. And if you notice, I've got a knot. And this will happen. Not a big deal. Okay, so, this is what happens. There you go. So there's the knot. I can't pull it through. If you pull it too tight, what's going to happen is that it will end up breaking the thread. So I still have this loop of fabric right here that has to go through. And I can't get it through. If I pull too hard, it's going to snap the thread. Don't do that. Don't worry about it. Just take this, okay, the loop that can't go through, tie a knot. There you go. I'm going to double knot it. And just because I'm paranoid, I'm going to triple knot it. Now, again, I'm going to, and you don't have to do this. If it's a small piece like this, you can usually just go ahead and sew it into the seam and it's not going to hurt anything. Because this one's so big, I'm just going to go ahead and cut it off. Again, I'm going to leave about half of a centimeter to a centimeter of fabric left over. So that way if the fabric, like if something pulls on the knot, then it's not going to come undone. So I'm going to continue to sew. And just take your time. There's no point in rushing. The more you practice, the better off you're going to get. When you first start, it's going to take a little time. And it's just like anything else. The reason why you're learning it is because you don't know it. So you're not going to be perfect at it the first time you do it. Just like going into take a foreign language. I'm not going to go into a Chinese class and speak perfect Chinese if my first language is English and I've never spoken Chinese before. Just doesn't happen. Unless you're a savant, and then that's awesome. Okay. Now, I'm getting to the corner. No worries, I'm just going to go around it. You don't have to stop at the corner. Now, what I like to do every once in a while is called a French knot. So, instead of doing just one loop, I'm going to do loop around a second, and that actually makes a very strong knot, like doing two knots at the end, like when we did this. And so, say you're playing with your dog, or something happens. If this seam gets cut in any way, if you've double knotted it here with the French knot, then if this seam knots, it's not going to tear out the rest of this. So you want to prevent that. Now if you ever make a mistake when you're sewing, there is something called a seam ripper, and what that does is it's a really cool little tool, and it looks like almost like a metal claw, and it just goes and just takes all the stuff out, all the string, and cuts it. just going to keep going. Make sure that when you're sewing, my stitches are pretty close together, and they don't have to be beautiful. Okay? You're not showing anybody the inside of your sock. What they're looking at is the outside. So you can see my stitches. I'm going to show you here. What ends up happening sometimes, and that's the other side, looks like stitches. Sometimes students will start, and they'll start putting their stitches way far apart. Keep your stitches close together. So, and I'm turning it on the other side so that you can see it better, because the black on the other side kind of hinders your view. Keep it close together. So I'm going like right next to it. Okay. Then I'm getting pretty close to being out of string. And when you see the length of my string, you think it's funny, but when you get to about 2 inches, it starts to get kind of hard making knots. So I'm going to keep on sewing just a little bit longer, and then once I get to that 2 inches, I'm going to stop. Okay, so do you see how long that string is now? It's not very long. It gets, again, kind of hard to make your stitches. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and stop here. And the reason why I'm stopping here is because if you get too close to the end, like right here, then you can't make your final knots to make sure that this seam is secure. If you don't secure your seam, if something does happen to where you only have about that much left and you can't maneuver with your thread anymore, what you're going to have to do is go ahead, do the best you can at making a final couple of knots, or a French knot if you can, and then you're going to, so I've sewed all this right here. Say it's not tied really well together, I would just start about 1 centimeter over what I've already sewed, and go back over, again, 1 centimeter what I've already sewed, and then go in the direction of what I have not sewn.